probably saw that I almost couldn't get up because this is so long. My stole, I stepped on it. This stole was given to me by one of my mentors when I first started out in the ministry, 20 years ago? I don't know. So thank you so much for reading that. So one of the underlying contexts of this month's sermon series, Have Faith, is that we live in a current climate where faith in people and organizations is at an all-time low. Institutions, etc. Would you agree with that? That we're sort of in a time where government, institutions, organizations has been in decline and continues to be in decline. It's been happening for several decades. And while it makes it tough to trust in those things, this moment isn't brought to you by anything other than consequences. Consequences, that people have understandably been hurt by a variety of ways in which institutions have let them down. And so when we see government officials line their pockets or advocate for the powerful and rich rather than those who have elected them, it makes it hard to trust, doesn't it? It just makes it hard to trust. When corporations no longer make things or support people for good and full employment, but instead line the pockets of their CEOs, it makes it hard to trust in companies, wouldn't you say? And when we see videos of ICE raids and the like going on around the world, it makes it really hard to trust our government officials who say they are here to protect and serve. And so what does it mean to have faith in faithless times? That's what we're kind of coming to together in an honest moment. What does it mean for us to have faith in faithless times? And I think we are no different than the people reading this book, this letter to them, the letter of Hebrews. We are struggling to figure out what it means to live as Jesus called in the world. And so for followers of Jesus, trusting in God, I think, means that we constantly are needed to be reminded by each other, by one another, that God is trustworthy, even if, right? Even if. So maybe in these tumultuous times, one of the main functions of a healthy church is to have everyone remind each other that, right? Like, God is present. I am present with you. I'm here with you in this moment. We can do hard things together. Everything will be okay. We don't have to pretend God is here. So I want you to look around. Actually, say something to your neighbor. Look to your neighbor and go, God is here. I am here with you. You're not doing this alone. And the mystery of life is that it will work out because God is faithful. Doesn't mean things won't be hard. Thank you. So see everyone around you. And in this space, you can just be. So if you rushed here, take a breath. It doesn't matter what you're wearing here. It doesn't matter where you came from. We're just happy that you're here. But I think one of the problems with partly the decline of trust in institutions is that one of those institutions that's let people down is what? Can you imagine? The church, right? The church. I heard that loud and clear, the church. And so I'm going to start. I promise I won't start every sermon series with the cold open that is the diatribe of what people were mad about this week. But here we did it again. And we did it, I think, a couple weeks ago, and it was successful. So here we are again. So there's a certain kind of Christians, I call them MAGA Christians, that are this group of people, right? And they're really, really mad this week again. Not that you're surprised. So I want to give you a couple scenarios as to why they might be mad. You're going to pick it, okay? Are you ready? Okay, good. Is it because this current administration turned COVID conspiracies into policies which are now putting real risk for cancer research? Is that why they're mad, do you think? Okay, might be mad. Is it because they're building an alligator Alcatraz in Indiana but calling it the Speedway Slammer? Do you think they're mad about that? Is it because it looks like this administration might pardon one or two infamous criminals? I don't know. Is it because this administration gutted the FDA and other regulatory agencies that make sure our water, air, and land are clean and healthy while running on a platform of making America healthy again? Do you think they're mad about that? I don't know. Is it because as school is gearing up, and this is the one that got me, well-qualified and highly educated teachers are learning the really hard truth that ICE agents get paid more than they do? Right? Do you think they're mad about that? We should value our teachers. Or, and again, or, I'm giving you this last option just because I'm having fun, is it because Cynthia Erivo, a black woman, played Jesus in a Hollywood Bowl adaptation of Jesus Christ Superstar? What? Yes, she did. And I had so many friends there. I was like, I know the right people in LA. I got so many props. But do you think maybe that's why they're mad? Yeah, you'd be right. You'd be right. This is not a hard game. It's not a hard game. It's just fun, right? Anyway. So how can we be entrusted to inspire folks to believe in a God they can't see when the people that they see get mad at art and shrug at injustice, right? How can they trust? I have to be honest, when I heard the cast of this thing in LA, I looked on my Southwest app to see if there were flights. Not gonna lie. I was like, I'm gonna go to this thing. And it turned out, because of things at church and people not here, like I couldn't really take the weekend away, but I thought about it because the cast was extraordinary. So this is one of those big, there's a few of them, like religiously themed Broadway spectacular productions, and one I haven't seen in person. I've seen Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. Who's seen that? Fantastic, beautiful. Not only have I seen Godspell, has anyone seen it? Godspell? Love Godspell. When I was, my first associate pastor gig when I did youth ministry, our youth actually put on Godspell. That's right, God, God's calling. Put on Godspell for their summer musical. And it was the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And yes, I did pilfer that for all it's worth for every sermon in that fall, for sure, for sure. So I admit I didn't know much about Jesus Christ Superstar when all of the brouhaha came. Here are some facts. It premiered on Broadway in 1971, so of course I wouldn't know it because I was born on that year and I certainly wasn't old enough to go to Broadway productions in 1971. It is an Andrew Lloyd Webber production. We love him, right, to some degree. It turned into a film in 1973. It was nominated for a few Oscars. It's sort of more described as a rock album that became a musical, right? It takes place the week before Jesus' crucifixion and ends at about the crucifixion a little after. And I find it fascinating that someone would write a rock opera about one of the hardest weeks it is, even as a church, to celebrate, which is the Holy Week of Easter, right? A rock opera. I think it humanizes Jesus in beautiful ways. It looks deeper into the motives of what it means to silence people like Jesus. Is he being too generous? Is he being too much? And how the message of Jesus that has been co-opted by the messenger's personality, the messenger, right? It is about the trials of infamy and famousness, right? The cost of fame. When you do something publicly, it has political and sociological and religious implications for those oppressed and for those in power. This play is a critique of our own human tendency to create superstars, to raise them up only to knock them down. When the message becomes more important than when the messenger becomes more important than the message. And so it's not perfect. It doesn't portray Mary Magdalene, and I'll use this in a sermon later in the way that I think biblically she is. And I think Judas is an unreliable narrator, right? He's a little self-serving in that play. And so we don't need it to be good theology. It's art, right? And so, but it does ask us the question, do we invoke the name of Jesus because he's a superstar? Or are we invoking the name of Jesus by the things we do that he told us to do, right? How are we invoking Jesus? Is Jesus a rock star, or is he the rock on which we put our faith? Did you see what I did there? Showing us that God is trustworthy. The lyricist said the original production of Godspell was initially inspired by the Bob Dylan song, "With God on Our Side." And this line from it, it says, "I can't think for you, you'll have to decide, did Judas have God on his side?" Right? And so the writer says this about the character of Judas, which he created, Jesus Christ Superstar, in order to inhabit. As far as what Christ was saying, general principles of how human beings should live together, Judas approved of all of this. What Judas was worried about was that as Christ got bigger and bigger and more popular, people began switching their attention from what Christ was saying to Christ himself. In other words, Judas was afraid of the fallout of Jesus' impact on the empire, the instability of speaking truth to power, because Jesus didn't just feed a few people, he fed thousands, which got the attention of all of the people in power who could feed people and weren't, right? He was a front to that. He thought Jesus was making it all harder. And so I wonder what it looks like for us to be the presence of Jesus in the world and not just invoke Jesus, the rock star. And so I wonder as a church what it means for us to be those people in the world. And for Judas and Jesus Christ Superstar, the tough part was not following Jesus, but going along with the ramifications of what that following meant for him. And we still wonder today, what happens when we deify someone but we don't take their words and actions seriously? If you can sing about Jesus on Sunday but then go and do terrible things on Monday, what does that mean about your faith? I personally love it when Jesus is set in any modern context. He will never be perfectly portrayed, but it always forces us to contend with how we see ourselves as Jesus' followers and what we actually think of Jesus. And then we ask the question, who gets to bear the image of Jesus, of the Christ? Just men? Just white men, right? We don't know why they're upset. Is it because she's a black woman? Is it because she's a woman? And are we following Jesus, the rock star, the superstar? Or are we following Jesus, the one who calls us to be the embodiment of God's love for us and our neighbor? You see, deifying someone is actually easy. We see it every day. Deifying people, famous people, politicians. If you have swag with someone's name on it, you're sort of deifying them, right? Like you're making them your mascot. We talked about that last week. We do it all the time. Deifying leaders and lifting up movements to the detriment of what the movement actually was. And so the question often is, does someone worship Jesus with enough gusto? And we focus a lot on the worship aspect. But the better question is someone who follows Jesus or calls himself a Christian loving their neighbor with as much gusto as they sing on Sunday? I love that there are no actual images of Jesus floating around in reality. We've made up some, but they don't exist. I love that Jesus didn't actually write down his own words. There's no memoir from Jesus. Everything that we know about Jesus are other people that experienced him. Isn't that fascinating that a God would come down in the form of Jesus, whatever we believe about that theologically, and wouldn't need to be his own witness? That he relied on other people to have the witness, that we are the bearers of that witness. Jesus and God relies on that. We know about Jesus because of the stories that were handed down. And so here we are in week 2 of Have Faith. We're actually in the faith part of the sermon series, as I said, in the book of Hebrews. And it's a letter for the followers of Jesus, like I said, reminding them of their old stories of God's work, of faithfulness in the past, God's promises fulfilled. Thank you for reading it, Byron. And what the author of Hebrews, I think, is attempting to do is unpack for these newer Christians, these uncertain Christians, these people that were in a tumultuous time, to say to them that everything that Jesus did and everything you're doing now connects directly back to the Old Testament, to the Hebrew Scriptures. That the same God that was there with Noah and the flood, this fantastical story that I could do a whole sermon series on how wild it is to actually understand what Jewish people mean when they talk about Noah and the flood. It's fascinating. That same God is the same God who's here with us today, and the same God that was with Jesus. And so what does it mean for us to embody that more fully? The author of Hebrews points back to the famous folks of the faith, right? Abel and Cain, Noah, Enoch, Abraham, Sarah, and Jacob. All of those folks who were infamous for doing bold things for God. And they did all those things before Jesus, right? And so that's what they're pointing out. You have Jesus. You have a very recent, real understanding of what it looks like to be God in the world. And they didn't have the same thing, and yet they were radically faithful. And we live in 2025, I hope, right? Are we? Sorry, making sure we're all awake. And Jesus is long gone for us in history, right? We are also reading through the lens of other people's crafting of the narration and story. And so what does it mean for us to believe in Jesus when we no longer see him with our eyes, touch him with our hands, and hear him with our ears? We have to remind ourselves that God was faithful then, and so God is faithful now. But that's a tritism that feels not really concrete, which is why I think the author of Hebrews does really specific things, goes back and shows the people, these amazing people of faith who did extraordinary things years and years and years ago. I think it's why we tell the stories of faith and our faith. We share our testimonies, our stories, the stories of the Bible, because it's God's promises lived in reality. And we remind ourselves that we are only one part of the story. We get glimpses of the ending, like it said in Hebrews. They saw the ending and saw the fulfillment, but they didn't get to experience it. We get to experience the aftermath of God's promise through Christ. And no doubt Noah was faithful, but he only caught a glimpse of God's promises. And again, now he is the embodiment of those promises. We invoke the name of Noah because he had faith that was so radical it transformed a culture and a people and continues to transform the world. God's promise is seen in the lives and the struggles of those who've gone before, and seen in the person, of course, in the works of Jesus, who left it up to us to be the promises of God who live on beyond him. And so that is the challenge I want for us today, to remind ourselves of, is that we have faith in God's promises, yes. But we have faith in God's promises in a way that reminds us that God left us in charge of those promises. That we are the ones that Jesus prayed for, the ones that will come after, the ones that will do all the things, even greater than he did, he said. And so what does it mean to live into the faith of God's promises? It means that we remind ourselves that when we follow Jesus, when we do the things of love and justice and goodness, we are the living promises of God. We are the living promises that this generation, this people, this time and tumultuous time needs. The steady, faithful people that say, even if, right? I wasn't going to use it when Byron said it, but even if, we're the people that say, yes, there's reality, and reality isn't easy and it's hard. And God is present. I know it, and I will be present with you in your time of need, in your time of struggle, in the time that you have. We will be present in the midst because we are the fulfillment of God's promises. May we continue to be, as a people, the living embodiment of God's promise of love and justice and goodness in the world. And may we do it with our whole chest and our whole heart. Amen.